Today, let's sew a scrunchie. Welcome, I do DIY and sewing related content, and today we're making a scrunchie. The best part about all of this is I have an Etsy pattern for it up right now. Use code Scrunchie23 in the first week to get 30% off of that too. It has all of the information you'll see here as well as more information too. So the first thing you'll need for your scrunchie is some sort of fabric. I'm using this really nice quilting cotton material. There's so many different fabrics you can use though for a scrunchie, and the pattern on Etsy does kind of go into more detail. For this video though, we're just going to be using a piece of fabric that can be 3.5 inches wide by 18 inches long. You want tape measure, pins, scissors, hand sewing needle, some matching thread that'll be coordinated to your fabric. And then you also want some elastic, and I'll get into elastic a little bit more later, like actually cutting it out. But for the elastic, it can be anywhere between 1/4 of an inch to 1/2 of an inch. I found anything less than 1/4 of an inch tends to snap a little easier, and then anything larger than 1/2 of an inch can get a little bulky. So I'm using this 1/4 of an inch elastic I got off Amazon. So with that said, let's start making our scrunchie. So for our fabric, again, I'm going to be using this nice cotton material. I actually made a skirt with this as well, so I'll be sure to link the video in case you're interested. Now, you can really use any scrap material. You could actually piece this together if you wanted to do that too. But for your material, you're going to want to cut it out so that you'll have it by 3.5 inches wide and then by 18 inches long. And that will get you a really nice rectangular scrunchie tube, I guess is what we'll call it for now. And this is how we'll start with our scrunchies. Now for our fabric, you'll have a right side, which is this very colorful printed side on my fabric, and then a wrong side, which is this like much paler, the back of the material. So we are going to be matching the long sides of this fabric up together to create that rectangle shape. And then we'll be using pins to secure this. Now what's really important is you want to leave about 1 inch on either end for the material where we are not going to be sewing. And that's going to allow us to have a spot for our elastic to go in later on. So I'm going to be starting where that pink pin is and taking a seam all the way down to the white pin. So for my machine, you're just going to want to straight stitch at this point. So you can see that I have this scrunchie set up so that my needle is actually starting about 1 inch into this rectangle. I'm going to start sewing, and then it's very important to back tack or to do that back stitch, as this secures your stitch in place. And then you just take a straight seam all the way down. Then when you get to the end, so where my pink pin is, I'm actually going to stop. So I'm going to again do that back stitch or back tacking so that I secure the stitch, and then I'm able to remove this from my sewing machine. So I'm leaving that 1 inch open on either end of the rectangle. So this is what my scrunchie looks like so far. We have that part where I'm not sewing at the top, and then we have this nice straight seam. So now I'm going to turn this right side out. There's lots of different ways you can turn these. I'm using my hands just to show that you do not need any special tools. You could definitely use a pencil or a pen to kind of push through, or a turning tool, but you do not need that. So this is what our tube looks like. And now what it's time to do is match those two short ends together. So this is why we left about 1 inch or so open on either end, as we need to pin these short edges together. And this is just going to give us one small seam that we're going to be taking across. So it's kind of on a curve because we have this tube-like structure so far, and we're bringing those two ends together to meet so that we can get this nice curve that we'll be able to use for our scrunchie. So again, I'm going to use that straight stitch. I'm going to put my presser foot down and then very slowly start sewing, doing the back tack or back stitching so I secure it, and then continuing all the way around. Now with this, since it is on a curve, you may need to rearrange your fabric so that you're not bunching up and it's not gathering on the bottom. To do this, you're just going to lift up your presser foot with the needle down in your scrunchie part so far, and then you're just going to kind of adjust your fabric here or there, and that will allow you to remove some of that bunching and gathering. So now we're going to set our scrunchie so far aside, and we are going to focus on the elastic now. So again, you're going to want about 1/4 inch to 1/2 of an inch with elastic, and that's going to give you a really nice feel for your scrunchie. Anything bigger than that gets a little bulky, and then a little less than that has prone to like overstretching. And you're going to want a 7-inch piece of elastic. So once you have that cut out, you're going to take your tube, and we are going to be guiding our elastic into our scrunchie tube. I use a safety pin on one end, and I just slowly gather this and put this through the scrunchie. If you ever have an issue where you're kind of like losing that other end, you can definitely kind of pin that in place onto your scrunchie and then just guide your safety pin all the way through. Once you get to the end, so both of the ends of the elastic are meeting, you're just going to pin those in place so that you're able to take a seam across both of those, so that will secure the elastic for you. When I'm doing this, I use a straight stitch and I kind of sew it across about 6-7 times. I do it multiple times because the more you do it, the more secure that stitch is going to be, so you don't have to worry about it breaking or coming undone when you're using your scrunchie. Now it's time to kind of clean this up a little bit, so I'm going to trim off some of those extra elastic ends. I'm going to trim off any threads that I see and just make it look a lot neater, as we only have one step left to do, and that's actually sewing up the hole on our scrunchie. So there's 2 different ways that we can close up our scrunchie. The first, and what I'm going to be showing you, is actually whip stitching this closed. So I take my needle with my thread and I go through both layers of that material, making sure there's no raw edges, and then I knot this, and then I just do a whip stitch all the way through. Now I'll include a link to a video on how to do a whip stitch in case you are not familiar with that term. It's very simple though, and it's probably one of the more basic hand stitching ways that you could go about it. You could also though use your machine and you could top stitch very, very closely to the edge. The way that this has been done so far is that the fabric is folded so that there are no raw edges. So top stitching would be a lot quicker, especially if you're trying to make these in like kind of a bulk way or make multiple scrunchies. Top stitching will be faster in the end. Once you are done though, you have your scrunchie completed. This is what it looks like. It looks so cute. Be sure to check out my Etsy page where you can get the full printable. If you were in the first week of this video, use code Scrunchie23 to get 30% off. Thanks so much for watching. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and tell me what you want to see next.